If I were to tell you a story about two brothers who went out like any other day, perhaps to hunt, to fish, to spend time together, you might think of a positive image. Yet in Genesis chapter 4, it is anything but a positive image. In fact, two brothers go out to a field, but only one comes back. God asks Cain about his brother Abel in Genesis 4, verse 9, and says, "Then the Lord said to Cain, 'Where is Abel your brother?' And he said, 'I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?' He said, 'What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground.'" And so here we can see that Cain responds to God's direct question about his brother by lying and then asking a question. And there we see an arrogance that he, of all people, talking to God himself, who knows all things, decides to play dumb and to show that arrogance. And so today we're going to talk about where that arrogance leads. Stay tuned. So arrogance itself ignores God's voice. And so in Exodus 5:2, Pharaoh said, "Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice to let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and besides, I will not let Israel go." And so even when Moses was speaking and telling him that God's will was, Pharaoh ignored that voice. In the same way, Cain also ignored God's voice. When God asked him, "Hey, what have you done?" Cain ignored really who he was talking to and just gave an answer that he could have given to anybody except for the all-knowing Creator. Arrogance doesn't fear God's power. In Daniel 3:15 it says, "Now if you are ready at the moment, you hear the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, trigon, psaltery, and bagpipe, and all kinds of music, to fall down and worship the image that I have made. Very well. But if you do not worship, you will immediately be cast into the midst of a furnace of blazing fire. And what God is there who can deliver you out of my hands?" And so in this section, we have King Nebuchadnezzar, who has made a statue of gold and has told people to worship it, and some do not. And so he's going to cast them into a furnace of blazing fire. The interesting thing about Nebuchadnezzar here is that he has an arrogance to say, "What God is there who can deliver you out of my hands?" That statement shows how much he believed in himself, how arrogant he himself was. And if you know the story of Nebuchadnezzar, and there's a fascinating part in his story where he goes outside and admires all of that is in his kingdom. And because of his arrogant heart, God actually makes him live like a beast for a time. Which brings us to our next point. God opposes the arrogant. So when you are arrogant and you ignore God's voice, you ignore God's power, then God opposes you. You are in opposition to him. You are against him. You are not for him because you are for yourself. So James 4:6-7 says, "But he gives a greater grace. Therefore it says, God is opposed to the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Submit therefore to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you." So here we can see that God is opposed to the proud. So he's in opposition to them, the arrogant, but he gives grace to the humble. And so arrogance leads to God opposing us. But if we humble ourselves, then we have grace. And so also arrogance does not lead to wisdom. In James 3:13-18 it says, "Who among you is wise and understanding? Let him show it by his good behavior, his deeds in the gentleness of wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your heart, do not be arrogant and so lie against the truth," which is what Cain did. "This wisdom is not that which comes down from above, but is earthly, natural, demonic. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there is disorder and every evil thing. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, reasonable, full of mercy and good fruits, unwavering, without hypocrisy. And the seed whose fruit is righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace." And so here we can see that arrogance doesn't lead to wisdom, but in and of itself is a form of ignorance, because arrogance is putting the creation, us, above the Creator. And how could we possibly think for any moment that we could stand against God and live? That we could stand against God and win. That's as preposterous as the watch that we used before, telling the watchmaker, I don't need you to fix me. I don't need you to help me. I didn't need you to create me because I could have created myself. And so some final questions today. As we think about Cain and we think about arrogance and what that entails and also where it leads. In what area are you ignoring God's voice? In what area are you not fearing God's power? Are you seeking wisdom, true godly wisdom? Or are you responding to God like Cain, with a lie and a question, with a deflection, without taking responsibility for your actions? Where are you allowing sin to go unchecked? Where are you being arrogant towards God? I pray this reflection finds you well and that you have a blessed day and a blessed week. And I'll see you next week. God bless.